Yay. All right.
So it's setting up. So we should be live in just a moment. Okay. So, hello, YouTube world. Welcome to the Love It
Or hate it. I put
podcast,
content.
where what do we do on this podcast? We read, analyze literature, we talk about any topics related.
If it's written down, we'll pick it up and talk about it. Something to that
Exactly.
effect. Something to that effect. And that covers everything. We got a lot of other stuff to cover. But yeah. This month is Poe. And it's been a lot of Poe. He's he's been he's been heavy. Whew. I've learned a lot about Poe. I liked him when I was a kid, but I'm learning a whole lot. Maybe I liked these things when I was younger and I forgot about them, but a lot of it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I remember reading The Raven when I was a little kid, and I remember bits and pieces of it. And that was like the only thing I really remember from my childhood of Edgar Allan Poe was The Raven. That was like the main thing I remember from studying in school.
did you
So,
see the Raven on The Simpsons? Did you see when they made
no,
fun of it? It's
no,
funny.
I
It's
didn't.
funny. They pretty much, I think, if I remember correctly, they do the dialogue correctly. Um, and they do it justice. It's definitely a Matt Groening version, but it's good.
I
It's
make fun of
interesting.
it.
I mean, in the way The Simpsons makes fun of everything. Yeah.
I
But
like The Simpsons. I love satire because anything that's sort of like making fun of something else, but in like a respectful way.
mhm.
I really love that stuff.
Oh,
So,
satire is great. Yeah. That's one of the spices of life is satire, without a
yes,
doubt.
I
So,
absolutely love satire. I feel like
so
satire is a way of making us laugh at our flaws and laugh at our foibles and not take and it's also a reminder to not take ourselves too seriously. Like if satire is done well, I think we laugh, we get reminded to have more of a lighthearted approach to things, and if it's really good satire, it helps elevate awareness. So
I'm with you. Yeah, I think that's spot on. That's yeah, the best comedy satire, without a doubt. Bye bye.
today we are going to be reading an Edgar Allan Poe story
Mm-hmm.
called
The facts in the case of M. Valdemar. I think it's Valdemar, but this one is different. Um, and we got a comment when we did Alone and Letter to Annabelle. Was that what it was called? A Letter to Annabelle?
Yes.
That somebody else has a YouTube page, and they had mentioned that he may have not written The Raven or Alone, and I think the Vault or the other one, the Annabelle one, and that this story kind of adds to his argument because this is a very different tone for him from Alone and The Raven and everything. It's a very this one. It seems like it's more like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle to me. It has a very much like Sherlock Holmes type feel to it in my mind.
Yeah.
And he's one of the guys that started off that. So this happened
Mhm.
before. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so that's cool. I like it. I don't know. I don't think you didn't like it too much, but maybe yeah, I don't know. What are you thinking?
Well, I want to read it and then talk about it. So,
Fine. I'm good for that.
yeah.
So you want me to start?
Sure. So
I'm
if you
done for
are
that.
watching from any device, if you're watching this at home, you can find this where?
I'm on poemuseum.org and I'll paste this in the chat so somebody can see it.
Okay.
Oh,
Looks
there's
like we
people in the
have
chat that are
Daniel and
saying hello.
Sean joining us. Hi, Daniel. Hi, Sean.
And
So if
there,
you
I just
want
posted it.
to follow along, Brian just posted the story in the chat.
Poe
All
Museum.
right.
Awesome. Appreciate Poe Museum existing. Anybody that does that keeps old literature alive in the internet world is worth mentioning. All right. So if I butcher any of these words, I don't think I will. I tried to take special care to listen to the pronunciation and see if I could do it correctly, but we'll see. I am Southern, so we're allowed that.
We're allowed
Anyway,
to. Yes,
yeah, slack jawed.
if he does pronounce anything incorrectly, feel free to correct us. If we say any facts that aren't totally on point, feel free to correct us. We'd love
Oh,
to
yeah, yeah,
learn.
yeah. Mhm.
Learn. This is a learning experience for everyone. So,
Yes, and we're in this massive library for this show. So I want to guarantee that neither one of us have read any of these fucking books.
I've read
None of
all of
them.
these books. I've
No,
read
that's
every
shit.
single book in this virtual library, all of them, in
Oh,
a
heard,
virtual way.
heard. All right, all right. I maybe I'll believe you. They look like they're really old, but this background was picked because this is in my mind is the setting of this story.
Yeah,
So
this is a
so it should
nice
give it
little
to me.
setting. It's sort of,
I Beautiful. I would
it's
love to
definitely
organize it like that.
appropriate for the story we're reading. That's for sure.
That is certainly for sure. All right, so we're ready. This
Yes.
is the facts in the case of M. Valdemar. We're going to go with that pronunciation of his name. Of course, I cannot pretend to consider it any matter for wonder that the extraordinary case of M. Valdemar has excited discussion. It would have been a miracle had it not, especially under the circumstances. Through the desire of all parties concerned to keep the affair from the public, at least for the present, or until we had farther opportunities for investigation. Through our endeavors to effect this, a garbled or exaggerated account made its way into society and became the source of many unpleasant misrepresentations and, very naturally, of a great deal of disbelief. It is now rendered necessary that I give the facts, as far as I comprehend them myself. They are succinctly these. My attention for the last 3 years had been repeatedly drawn to the subject of mesmerism, and about 9 months ago, it occurred to me quite suddenly that in the series of experiments made hitherto, there had been a very remarkable and most unaccountable omission. No person had as yet been mesmerized in articulo mortis. It remained to be seen. First, whether, in such condition, there existed in the patient any susceptibility to the magnetic influence. Secondly, whether, if any existed, it was impaired or increased by the condition. Thirdly, to what extent or for how long a period the encroachments of death might be arrested by the process. There were other points to be ascertained, but these most excited my curiosity, the last in especial, from the immensely important character of its consequences. In looking around me for some subject by whose means I might test these particulars, I was brought to think of my friend M. Ernest Valdemar, the well-known compiler of the Bibliotheca Forensica and author under the nom de plume of Ishkar Marx, of the Polish versions of Wallenstein and Gargantua. M. Valdemar, who has resided principally at Harlem, New York since the year 1839, is, or was, particularly noticeable for the extreme spareness of his person, his lower limbs much resembling those of John Randolph, and also for the whiteness of his whiskers, in violent contrast to the blackness of his hair. The latter, in consequence, being very generally mistaken for a wig. His temperament was markedly nervous and rendered him a good subject for mesmeric experiment. On 2 or 3 occasions, I had put him to sleep with little difficulty, but was disappointed in other results which in his peculiar constitution had naturally led me to anticipate. His will was at no period positively or thoroughly under my control. And in regard to clairvoyance, I had accomplished him with I could accomplish with him nothing to be relied upon. I always attributed my failure at these points to the disordered state of his health. For some months previous to my becoming acquainted with him, his physicians had declared him in a confirmed phthisis. It was his custom, indeed, to speak calmly of his approaching dissolution as a matter neither to be avoided nor regretted. When the ideas to which I have alluded first occurred to me, it was, of course, very natural that I should think of M. Valdemar. I knew the steady philosophy of the man too well to apprehend any scruples from him, and he had no relatives in America who would be likely to interfere. I spoke to him frankly upon the subject, and to my surprise, his interest seemed vividly excited. I say to my surprise, for although he had always yielded his person freely to my experiments, he had never been given me any tokens of sympathy with what I did. His disease was of that character which would admit of exact calculation in respect to the epoch of its termination in death. And it was finally arranged between us that he would send for me about 24 hours before the period announced by his physician as that of his decease. It is now rather more than 7 months since I received Valdemar himself the subjoined note. My dear P, you may as well come now. D and F are agreed that I cannot hold out beyond tomorrow, midnight, and I think they have it hit the time very nearly. Valdemar. I received this note within half an hour after it was written, and in 15 minutes more, I was in the dying man's chamber. I had not seen him for Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, I think we just lost. I think my house just flickered power, so I don't know if I have the internet right now. Am I still?
You froze for 1 second. It was literally
Oh,
just a second. So
oh, I thought.
last thing we heard were the last thing I heard was just take it back like a few sentences.
Okay. I thought my router reset. That's why I stopped. Um, so he. Oh, so my computer's connected to Wi-Fi. I guess. Okay, now I figured out what happened. My phone's actually using the the cellular signal. That's why it didn't jump, but the internet on my computer jumped. That's what made me think I lost you. All right.
You froze for just take it back a few sentences.
I got you. So when last we left, the sick and dying guy that he's getting ready to do the mesmering on sent him a letter, and he says, "You may as well come now. D and F are agreed that I cannot hold out beyond tomorrow night, and I think they have hit the time very nearly." Valdemar. Hey, by the way, that power surge was pretty cool because it kind of fits the story.
You know, it
Um,
was almost
yeah.
as if Poe himself did it
So we
from the
should have done the Ouija.
beyond.
We should have done the Ouija board.
It was like
Next
Poe
time.
himself was trying to let his presence be known.
Mm.
He's listening.
He was saying, "I hate the reading you're doing of this story." Um, anyway, all right, so here we go. I received this note within half an hour after it was written, and in 15 minutes more, I was in the dying man's chamber. I had not seen him for 10 days and was appalled by the fearful alteration which the brief interval had wrought in him.
Isn't connected to the internet. Take a look at the help section in your Alexa.
All right.
Mopar! Mopar!
Yay, Mopar.
Good to see you.
The fearful alteration which brief interval had wrought in him. His face wore a leaden hue. The eyes were utterly lustrous, and the emaciation was so extreme that the skin had been broken through by the cheekbones. His expectoration was excessive. The pulse was barely perceptible. He retained, nevertheless, in a very remarkable manner, both his mental power and a certain degree of physical strength. He spoke with distinctness, took some palliative medicines without aid, and when I entered the room, was occupied in penciling memoranda in a pocketbook. He was propped up by the bed by pillows. Doctors D and F were in attendance. After after pressing Valdemar's hand, I took these gentlemen aside and obtained from them a minute account of the patient's condition, a minute account of the patient's condition. The left lung had been for 18 months in a semi-osseous or cartilaginous state and was, of course, entirely useless for all purposes of vitality. The right, in its upper portion, was also partially, if not thoroughly, ossified, while the lower region was merely a mass of purulent tubercles running one into another. Several extensive perforations existed, and at one point, permanent adhesion to the ribs had taken place. He's got pleuria. These appearances in the right lobe were of comparatively recent date. The ossification had proceeded with very unusual rapidity. No sign of it had been discovered a month before, and the adhesion had only been observed during the 3 previous days. Independently of the Jesus. The patient was suspected of aneurysm of the aorta. But on this point, the osseous symptoms rendered an exact diagnosis impossible. It was the opinion of both physicians that M. Valdemar would die about midnight on the morrow, Sunday. It was then 7 o'clock on Saturday evening. On quitting the invalid's bedside to hold conversation with myself, doctors D and F had bidden him a final farewell. It had not been their intention to return, but at my request, they agreed to look in upon the patient about 10 the next night. Well, that's nice. When they had gone, I spoke freely with M. Valdemar on the subject of his approaching dissolution, as well as, more particular, of the experiment proposed. He still professed himself quite willing and even anxious to have it made, and urged me to commence it at once. A male and female nurse were in attendance, but I did not feel myself altogether at liberty to engage in a task of this character with no more reliable witness than these people, in case of sudden accident might prove. I therefore postponed operations until about 8 the next night, when the arrival of a medical student with whom I had some acquaintance, M. Theodore L., relieved me from further embarrassment. It had been my design originally to wait for physicians, but I was induced to proceed, first by the urgent entreaties of M. Valdemar, and secondly by my conviction that I had not a moment to lose, as he was evidently sinking fast. Mr. L. I was so kind as to accede to my desire that he would take notes of all that occurred, and it is from his memoranda that what I now have to relate is, for the most part, either condensed or copied verbatim. It wanted about 5 minutes of 8 when, taking the patient's hand, I begged him to state, as distinctly as he could, to Mr. L., whether he, M. Valdemar, was entirely willing that I should make the experiment of mesmerizing him in his then condition. He replied feebly, yet audibly, yes, I wish to be mesmerized, adding immediately afterwards, I fear you have deferred it too long. While he spoke thus, I commenced the passes which I had already found most effectual in subduing him. He was evidently influenced with the first lateral stroke of my hand across his forehead, but although I exerted all my powers, no further perceptible effect was induced until some minutes after 10 o'clock, when Dr. D and F called. According to appointment, I explained to them in a few words what I designed, and as they opposed no objection, saying that the patient was already in the death agony, I proceeded without hesitation, exchanging, however, the lateral passes for downward ones and directing my gaze entirely in the right eye of the sufferer. By this time, his pulse was imperceivable and his breathing was stertorous and at intervals of half a minute. The condition was nearly unaltered for a quarter of an hour. At the expiration of this period, however, a natural, although very deep sigh escaped the bosom of the dying man, and his stentorious breathing ceased. That is to say, its stentorousness was no longer apparent. The intervals were undiminished. The patient's extremities were of an icy coldness. At 5 minutes before 11, I perceived unequivocal signs of the mesmeric influence. A glassy roll of the eye was exchanged for that expression of uneasy inward examination, which is neither seen except in cases of sleepwalking, and which it is quite impossible to mistake. With a few rapid lateral pauses, I made the lids quiver as in incipient sleep, and with a few more, I closed them altogether. I was not satisfied, however, with this, but continued the manipulations vigorously, and with the fullest exertion of the will, until I had complete stiffness the limbs of the slumberer. After placing them in a seemingly easy position, the legs were at full length, the arms were nearly so, and reposed upon the bed at a moderate distance from the loins. The head was slightly elevated. When I accomplished this, it was fully midnight. Those doctors were spot on. And I requested the gentleman present to examine M. Valdemar's condition. After a few experiments, they admitted him to be in an unusually perfect state of mesmeric trance. The curiosity of both the physicians was greatly excited. Dr. D resolved at once to remain with the patient all night, while Dr. F took leave with a promise to return at daybreak. Mr. L and the nurses remained. We left M. Valdemar entirely undisturbed until about 3 o'clock in the morning, when I approached him and found him in precisely the same condition as when Dr. F went away. That is to say, he lay in the same position, the pulse was imperceivable, the breathing was gentle, scarcely noticeable, unless through the application of a mirror to the lips. The eyes were closed naturally, and the limbs were as rigid as cold as marble. Still, general appearance was certainly not that of death. I guess the doctors were off. As I approached M. Valdemar, I made a kind of half effort to influence his right arm into pursuit of my own as I passed the latter gently to and fro above his person. In such experiments with the patient, I had never perfectly succeeded before, and assuredly I had little thought of succeeding now. But to my astonishment, his arm very readily, although feebly, followed every direction I assigned it with mine. I determined to hazard a few words of conversation. M. Valdemar, I said, are you asleep? He made no answer, but I perceived a tremor above the lips and was thus induced to repeat the question again and again. And its third repetition, his whole frame was agitated by a very slight shivering. The eyelids unclosed themselves so far as to display a white line of the ball. The lips moved sluggishly, and from between them, in a barely audible whisper, issued the words, yes, asleep now. Do not wake me. Let me die so. I here felt the limbs and found them as rigid as ever. The right arm, as before, obeyed the direction of my hand. I questioned the sleepwalker again. Do you still feel pain in the breast, M. Valdemar? The answer was immediate, but even less audible than before. No pain. I am dying. I did not think it advisable to disturb him further just then, and nothing more was said or done until the arrival of Dr. F., who came a little before sunrise and expressed unbound astonishment at finding the patient still alive. After feeling the pulse and applying a mirror to the lips, he requested me to speak with the sleepwalker again. I did so, saying, M. Valdemar, do you still sleep? As before some minutes elapsed, ere a reply was made. The opinion, or rather the wish of the physicians, that M. Valdemar should be suffered to remain undisturbed in his present, apparently tranquil condition until death should supervene. And this, it was generally agreed, must now take place within a few minutes. I concluded, however, to speak to him once more and merely repeated my previous question. While I spoke, there came a marked change over the countenance of the sleepwalker. The eyes that rolled themselves slowly open, the pupils disappeared upwardly, the skin generally assumed a cadaverous hue, resembling not so much parchment as white paper, and the circular hectic spots, which hitherto had been strongly defined in the center of each cheek, went out at once. I use this expression because the suddenness of their departure put me in mind of nothing so much as the extinguishment of a candle by a puff of the breath. The upper lip at the same time writhed itself away from the teeth, which it had previously covered completely, while the lower jaw fell with an audible jerk, leaving the mouth widely extended and disclosing in full view the swollen and blackened tongue. I presume that no member of the party then present had been unaccustomed to deathbed horrors, but so hideous beyond conception was the appearance of M. Valdemar at this moment that there was a general shrieking back from the region of the bed. Shrinking. I now felt that I have reached a point of this narrative at which every reader will be startled into positive disbelief. It is my business, however, simply to proceed. I don't know. I just think this story's hilarious. There was no longer the faintest sign of M. Valdemar, and concluding him to be dead, we were consigning him to the charge of the nurses when a strong vibratory motion was observed in the tongue. This continued for perhaps a minute. At the expiration of this period, there issued from the distended and motionless jaw a voice, such as it would be madness in me to attempt describing. There are indeed 2 or 3 epithets which might be considered as applicable to it in part. I might say, for example, that the sound was harsh and broken and hollow, but the hideous whole is indescribable for the simple reason that no similar sounds have ever jarred upon the ear of humanity. There were 2 particulars, nevertheless, which I thought then and still think might fairly be stated as charismatic of the intonation and well adapted to convey some idea of its unearthly peculiarity. In the first place, the voice seemed to reach our ears, at least mine, from a vast distance, or from some deep cavern within the earth. In second place, it impressed me, I fear indeed that it will be impossible to make myself comprehended, as gelatinous or glutinous matters impress the sense of touch. Hope he doesn't have a gluten allergy. I have spoken both of of sound and of voice. I mean to say that the sound was one of distinct, or even wonderful, thrillingly distinct syllabification. M. Valdemar spoke, obviously in reply to the question I propounded to him a few minutes before. I had asked him, it will be remembered, if he still slept. He now said, yes, no, I have been sleeping, and now I am dead. No, no person present even affected to deny or attempt to repress the utterable shuddering horror with which these few words, thus uttered, were so well calculated to convey. Mr. L, the student, swooned. The nurses immediately left the chamber and could not be induced to return. My own impressions I would not pretend to render intelligible for the reader. For nearly an hour we busied ourselves silently without the utterance of a word, in endeavors to revive Mr. L. When he came to himself, we addressed ourselves again to the investigation of M. Valdemar's condition. The guy's, anyway, it, it remained in all respects as I have described it, with the exception that the mirror no longer afforded evidence of respiration. An attempt to draw blood from the arm failed. I should mention, too, that this limb was no further subject to my will. I endeavored in vain to make it follow the direction of my hand. The only real indication, indeed, of the mesmeric influence was now found in the vibratory movements of the tongue. Whenever I addressed M. Valdemar a question, he seemed to be making an effort to reply, but had no longer sufficient volition. To queries put to himself by any other person than myself, he seemed utterly insensible. Although I endeavored to place each member of the company in mesmeric rapport with him, I believe that I have now related all that is necessary to understand of the sleepwalker's state at this epoch. Other nurses were procured, and at 10 o'clock, I left the house in company with the two physicians and Mr. L. Whew. All right. In the afternoon, we called again to see the patient. His condition remained precisely the same. We now had the same discussion as to the propriety and feasibility of awaking him, but we had little difficulty in agreeing that no good purpose would be served by doing so. It was evident that so far death, or what is usually termed death, had been arrested by the mesmeric process. It seemed clear to us that to awaken M. Valdemar would be merely to ensure his instant, or at least his speedy dissolution. From the period until the close of last week, an interval of nearly 7 months, we continued to make daily calls at M. Valdemar's house, accompanied now and then by medical and other friends. All this time, the sleepwalker remained exactly as I have last described him. The nurse's attentions were continual. It was on Friday last that we resolved to make the experiment of awaking or attempting to awaken him, and it is the perhaps unfortunate result of this latter experiment which was given rise to so much discussion in private circles, to so much of what I cannot help think unwarranted popular feeling. For the purpose of relieving Ms. M. Valdemar from the mesmeric trance, I made use of the customary passes. These, for a time, were unsuccessful. The first indication of revival was afforded by a partial descent of the iris. It was observed as especially remarkable that this lowering of the pupil was accompanied by the profuse outflowing of a yellowish ichor from beneath the lids, of a pungent and highly offensive odor. Ooh. It was now suggested that I should attempt to influence the patient's arm. As heretofore, I made the attempt and failed. Dr. F. then intimated a desire to have me put a question. I did so as follows. M. Valdemar, can you explain to us what are your feelings or wishes now? There was an instant return of the hectic circles of the cheeks. The tongue quivered or rather rolled violently in the mouth, although the jaws and lips remained rigid as before. And at length the same hideous voice, which I have already described, broke forth. For God's sakes, quick, quick, put me to sleep, or quick, waken me, quick, I say to you that I am dead. I was thoroughly unnerved and for that instant remained undecided what to do. At first, I made an endeavor to recompose the patient, but failing in this through total abeyance of the will, I retracted my steps and as eagerly struggled to awaken him. In this attempt, I soon saw that I should be successful, or at least I soon fancied that my success would be complete, and I am sure that all in the room were prepared to see the patient awaken. For what really occurred, however, is quite impossible that any human being could have been prepared. As I rapidly made the mesmeric passes, amid ejaculations of dead, dead, absolutely bursting from the tongue and not from the lips of the sufferer, his whole frame at once, within the space of a single minute or even less, shrunk, crumbled, absolutely rotted away beneath my hands. Upon the bed, before the whole company, there lay a nearly liquid mass of loathsome, of detestable putrescence. That's it. I just love that they like I love that story. It's just a bunch of con men fucking with this poor guy. That's what I get from it. Like, we don't know what to do. He's in a lot of pain. Let's come back in 7 months. I got shit to do.
Yeah. Um, what I liked about the story, I'll talk about what I liked about it. I like that it is sort of, to me, it seems to suggest that meddling with death or trying to keep yourself from dying, trying to keep anyone from dying, um, is like playing with fire. There's only
Mhm.
so much you can do to fight mortality. I mean, human beings are immortal. So if you're trying to mess with like the human mind, and consciousness. And I like that it sort of makes you think about like, okay, consciousness versus our physical form. And is there a
Mhm.
separation? It makes you wonder, okay, is there a separation between our consciousness, our awareness, and our physical body? Because in this story, it's obviously fiction, but this story depicts a mesmerist who is able to talk to the soul of someone who died with mesmerism. So
You think
this
that's what he's
this
talking to, his soul?
I mean, it's open to interpretation, but he's talking to his, you can call it a soul, you could call it his consciousness, you could call it his awareness, his I mean, his mouth is moving. He's able to hear and respond even though he's quote unquote dead. So, anyway, I like some of the ideas that it talks about and provokes thought about.
Do you,
Um,
do you remember the movie Oh Brother Where Art Thou? Do you know that
uh,
one?
yes,
You've seen
I
it.
I don't remember it very well.
But do you remember George Clooney's character? He was kind of like an idiot, but he had real his speech pattern, the way
Yeah,
he talked like he knew everything and he really didn't know anything.
yeah.
That's what I get from these people. I think these people are kind of like him. They're just a bunch of blowholes. They're not like, I mean, the doctors are allegedly medical doctors, I guess, but they're just instantly involved in this. Like, none of them really know what the hell's going on. That's what I thought was funny. That's what I think's funny about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do agree with you. I saw a thing on YouTube where somebody did a commentary and they said this is a positive story because Poe's telling this idea that, yeah, like you say, that you have this consciousness, and that might mean that everybody that's dead isn't really dead. They're just kind of floating in the ether out there, and that you can reach out and touch them, so to speak. And maybe that's a pretty thing. That's a pretty thought. I don't know. I don't think I believe it, but that's pretty. It's pretty to think that. I don't know. But then there's also the idea that if you looked at it from if I looked at it from a drier perspective, that what if the whole mesmeric thing's complete BS and he's not really dead? That he's
Yeah.
just lying there kind of half
Yeah.
alive and that they're just essentially torturing this poor man.
Right,
and,
right. And
and that
that's
they're,
one,
yeah,
mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's one way of
Yeah.
interpreting it. They think that he's dead and that they're able to speak to him,
Hmm.
because he's in this hypnotic, or the term was mesmerism back then. It
Yeah,
evolved
yeah,
to hypnosis later. But so they think, these pseudoscientists think that, oh, we're able to speak to him because he's in a trance when really maybe he's just not totally dead yet.
yeah. Hmm.
So I like
Poor
I
guy.
like that the ending is also ambiguous and open to interpretation. It is kind of haunting in a way. Um,
The fact that he melts is really, that's just cool.
yeah, though the visual of him melting is kind of gruesome, but to me that sort of suggests a cautionary tale of there's a danger in trying to meddle with, just trying to have control over what happens. Life after death. Like life after death is something that is unknown for the living, right? Most people are scared about what's going to happen to them when they die.
Mhm.
And when you're trying to interfere with that realm, maybe there's consequences that aren't so good, you know. To
Mhm.
me, that's sort of like what this cautionary tale is suggesting, that there's a danger in meddling with that realm, with the life after death realm. But it does raise questions about consciousness and
It's clever too. I mean, for that time period, probably there's religion, and religion would have been the only one that really would have addressed life after death, and in that very religious tense. So this is a way to discuss it, or for Poe to kind of, like, you could read this story back then and sit around a room and discuss this story, and you're really discussing consciousness, the soul, what it's like to die, like, what you, but things that you couldn't discuss otherwise without the religious context or connotations. So it frees you up from that. I heard somebody the other day on an Art Bell or one of those coast to coast things. Uh, he referred to the Christian Bible as the handbook for the metaphysical, the metaphysical handbook. He
mm,
referred to that because he said that's what it is, because it's
yeah,
talking about the afterlife and all that stuff. It's
yeah,
like the metaphysical handbook. That's what he kept referring to the Christian Bible as.
yeah.
That's a clever, from this context, that's exactly what that would be. I don't
Yeah,
know.
and
Yeah.
it's interesting you bring up the term metaphysical. So, mesmerism originally was thought to be this metaphysical energy that had to do with what's called animal magnetism, or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what they call animal magnetism. This guy, oh, what was his name? It was like
I've got the history
Ron,
pulled up. Which one? I've got a couple characters.
Franz,
Which one?
Franz Anton. He was in the late 18th century. And he believed that there was like this invisible natural force, this like fluid between people. So
Mhm.
mesmerism was all metaphysical. And then a Scottish surgeon took some of the ideas of mesmerism and started applying them in a scientific way. And that's what we know today as hypnosis, using psychology, using actual science, as opposed to like pseudoscience. So that's sort of the difference between hypnosis and mesmerism. Hypnosis is more scientific based, whereas mesmerism was all just metaphysical
Some of it could be
ideas.
stage performances and all
Yeah,
that. You know where metaphysics, the term, comes from?
I don't think so. No.
Meta just means beyond, and
Hmm.
beyond physics. So metaphysics originally, if you had a physics book, which would have been
Hmm.
hard science, metaphysics was the stuff they put in the back of the book. It's the stuff
Okay.
beyond that, because it's like Michael Shermer. He has a book, "Why People Do Weird Things" or something. It's been so long, sorry, it's been 30 years. But he he in the back of his, he calls it fuzzy science, and it's stuff that, like, we don't have a lot of evidence for it, but this shit happens a lot, and maybe it's true,
Yeah.
and you kind of can talk about it, try to talk about it intelligently, but you don't have a lot of evidence on it yet. And this one fell in that category. You see
Yeah.
some things, you can see weird stuff that happens, and I'm not a huge believer of this, but I do know that it has interesting effects. In the 80s, they said that children were listening to rock and roll music, and it had subliminal messages, which is the same thing, and it was
Mhm.
causing them to kill themselves. That probably
Mhm.
wasn't the case, but it was enough so to get everybody upset. Uh, what was it? George Bush Jr., when he ran for president against Al Gore, he ran an ad and it had a subliminal part in it where it said the word rats, and you just kind of saw it for a half second. And they would do the thing with what the Cokes. They would flash a one frame of a Coke in a video in the movie theater to make you go drink sodas.
Yeah.
So there's some stuff in there that's true,
Yeah,
you
and
know? Yeah.
and the subliminal messaging is actually backed by a lot of science, because the
Mhm.
subconscious mind has a lot of power in how we think, what we do,
Mhm.
um, beyond like what's below our conscious mind, our subconscious mind. So the hypnosis is sort of about accessing the subconscious mind, and I find that stuff really interesting. What I find interesting about this particular story is that it is somewhat still relevant today because people today in 2024 are still fascinated with the idea of preserving the human consciousness. Is there a way we can preserve our consciousness after we die? And that's essentially what this mesmerist was trying to do, was trying to preserve he was trying to treat him like a science project and preserve his consciousness after he's dead.
There's a couple universities. I read something, it's been a few years, but they're working on a thing where you can essentially upload yourself before you die into a computer.
Yeah.
They don't know how long you'll last. And that sounds like a special kind of hell. But
yeah.
even if you had a really bad car accident and you're getting ready to bleed to death, and you could hit a button and you could just get maybe 5 minutes to send some emails. Like, hey, here's the code to the safe, tell my cat I love him, something like that. Maybe. So that's the exact same thing as what this story is talking about. How many hundreds of years later? So 200 years later.
Yeah,
so we're still talking about it, and we don't seem like we know much else. We don't seem like we know much more.
We've probably barely scratched the surface of what we know and what we understand. What happens to us after we die is still very much a mystery. I mean, some people have beliefs, which are fun to hear about, but
like the
Mopar
brain,
says,
we know like the anatomy and we know the physiology, but then you'll hear those things where somebody will get a rod shoved through their head and their personality changes entirely, and you can't necessarily reproduce that. There's a book called The Broken Brain where this lady wrote about how brain activity works. There's some of the weird surgeries they did on people, and even today we don't really know too much. Like, we don't understand consciousness. An example of consciousness that blows my mind is that you can put someone in a maximum security prison all alone. They will lose their fucking mind. But you can also go into a cave of your own volition and stay there, same situation, except for you're doing it on your own, and you'll come out with these prophetic thoughts. You might write the I Ching or something. Just the exact same situation, but just that slight derivation that you went in on your own or somebody drug you in. But people don't walk out of prison sounding like prophets. They sound crazy, like madmen. But that's so. Or you can walk down the street talking to yourself, and that's considered crazy, but thinking to yourself isn't. And it's the same effect. But I don't know. That's we don't understand consciousness too well. Like, every religion is trying to get their hands on it, but they can't quite get a grip. It's like trying to grip water or something in your hands. I don't know. But this book,
it's a never-ending question that is interesting to pontificate on, for sure. But I do like the idea of hypnosis and hypnotherapy, especially. Hypnotherapy is similar to meditation, and today, the modern hypnotherapy is all about healing, training the brain to either stop unhealthy habits by using suggestions and accessing our subconscious mind, focusing the subject's attention. And many people, there's been a lot of stories, people claiming that they were dealing with a digestive issue and hypnotherapy was the one thing that helped. Or, they were dealing with depression and hypnotherapy was one thing that helped. So,
did you see that? Oh, sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. I brought this little hypnosis script I wanted to try.
I was going to ask you, did you see in one of those things that we were studying before this, the dodo effect? Did you see that one?
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me see if I can explain this right. If the person having it done to them believes it, and the person who is doing it believes in the process they're utilizing, then it will work to some appreciable degree. We're talking about placebo, but placebo, I read an interesting thing. I think it was during the Korean War and the Vietnam War. They had situations where they would run out of morphine or whatever painkiller, ether, or whatever stuff they were using, and they would tell the patients that they were giving it to them and they weren't. And the patients would be okay because their mind would trick them. So I don't know. Well, I don't guess we really know what we're doing, but the hypnotherapy stuff, like I say, I kind of feel like it's a bunch of bunk, but I'm up against a lot of interesting situations and a lot of interesting data. So it might just be I don't know, but it probably is.
Yeah, the dodo effect is sort of like the placebo effect.
Yeah.
Its name is actually derived from Alice in Wonderland.
Really? Where's the dodo in
Yeah,
that
from the
story?
dodo, the dodo bird. He was in like a race and he said something like everybody has won and all must have prizes. Uh, and yeah, that's sort of what the name, the dodo effect comes from, is the Alice in Wonderland story.
I didn't know that. I just assumed it was for
Fun
that
fact.
fucking bird. All right. So what are we gonna do? So we're gonna try the hypnotism thing.
Yeah, well, I have a hypnotherapy script for health, wealth, and happiness.
Okay. Health,
So,
wealth, and happiness.
if you are watching at home and you want to be my subject, this type of hypnotherapy is just similar to meditation, and it's supposed to have a very positive healing effect on the mind and body.
Get better. Right.
So I was gonna read it, and Brian, if you want to be my subject and just close your eyes and listen, we can see what kind of effect it has on you. And then if you're watching from home, you can comment below and let me know what kind of effect it has on you. You want to
And
try
if it's
it?
anything, yes, yes. And if anything negative happens to anybody at home, we are not legally liable.
Right.
We are completely released from all liability and responsibility. But if you make money, we want some of it. We
So
want
I am
some
a
money.
certified yoga teacher and I'm a certified meditation instructor. So this is basically like a guided meditation slash hypnotherapy. So I
All
am
right.
certified to do this. So just sit back, relax, and just see how the hypnosis feels. It's going to take less than 10 minutes.
All right.
So Mopar,
You-
are you watching? Oh, Mopar is still there. Are you ready to listen to this hypnotherapy? See how it feels?
Hypnotherapy.
So, it involves induction, deepening, positive suggestions for happiness, health, and wealth.
I'm looking for that. I'm gonna, as soon as we get done, I'm gonna go play the lottery.
Yeah, this will be interesting. Mopar's still there. You want to do it? All right. Let me fix the
I don't even see anybody chatting. I don't know why my chat doesn't show anybody. I mean, I see the old chats, but they stopped a while back. Maybe that was the power outage.
All right. Something happened to
And you're vanishing.
focus.
Is that part of the mesmerizing?
You're getting very sleepy.
Can you?
No, sometimes if I get really close to the camera, it'll refocus on my eyeball. Eyeball.
Hey, so just with respect to the story, you liked it or you didn't like it?
Well, it's not my favorite type of story. And I think one of the reasons is just the language back then is just not language I'm used to. So
Mhm.
parts of it felt kind of wordy to me. I felt
Very verbose.
it felt kind of long and parts of it were a little boring to me. Um, like I feel like if they could have done it and made everything a little shorter, I probably would have enjoyed it more.
So
But
with
I mean, on a scale of 1 to 5, I rate it like 3 out of 5. So it's not like I hated it. It's not like I loved it. I was somewhere in the middle. But let
oh,
us know what you think. You guys watching at
oh,
home, did
so
you hate it? Did you love it? This is
last
somewhere in the middle.
question. Last
Yeah.
question. Do you think that that hypnotizing someone before they die would have any effect?
I don't know. I don't
Not
know.
necessarily what it does in the story, but I mean, just do you would you put any if somebody told you they were going to do that, would you think they had a good chance of seeing something different? You know what I mean? I don't. That's what I'm just asking. Yeah.
That's a really good question, but I really don't know.
All right.
What do
Oh,
you
so there.
think?
Oh, well, I mean, people kind of fade out when they die. It seems like they do, and I've heard all those stories. Sam Kinison, think that was the comedian, the one that screamed a lot.
Yeah.
They said when he died, he was in a car wreck, and when they come up on him, he was sitting there arguing with somebody, and he was like, "I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it." Okay, and then he died.
Yeah.
So you're talking to somebody, but that could just be adrenaline pumping in your body. It could not, doesn't necessarily mean it's a metaphysical experience. But if there's the slightest chance of that, then yeah, it would probably something would happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Or
mean,
maybe hang on to something. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's definitely interesting to wonder about how, and I think it would depend on the type of hypnosis, right? How would some type of hypnosis influence someone right before they die? Would perhaps like it would make passing a little easier?
Sure.
Um,
Like kind of
I
shut
don't,
down it on your own terms.
yeah, I
Maybe.
don't
Yeah.
know. You know, the mind-body connection is something that I've always been fascinated with, and that's one of the reasons I became a yoga instructor because it's all about the mind-body connection, the brain-body connection. And if the brain believes certain things, the body responds to those beliefs. Every thought we have has a physiological reaction in the body. So I do believe that there's something to the power of positive thinking. And I believe there's something to the power of negative thinking. Your thoughts affect you physically. So that's why stress causes disease. Stress often comes from the mind and it
Mhm.
affects the body. So it's all one, you know? So I
If
feel
your
like
stress goes up, your cortisone goes up, and cortisone levels not necessarily good for you. Yeah.
cortisol, yeah.
Yeah. Or cortisone's the steroid. Cortisol, yeah, I get you. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I definitely believe that there is uh there's something that can be beneficial to modern day hypnotherapy. I do think that the human brain could benefit from it to a degree. Like to what degree is what's debatable, you know?
Mhm. I mean, we
Um,
see it, like I say, we do see subliminals. There still exists today. The propaganda in most of our news now, it's all that's playing on that. When I was in Minnesota years ago, they were building a museum about 2 hours north of the cities, and we were staying in a friend of mine and I were in a cabin. And while they were building the casino, they had these social scientists there, and they would come to the diner. It was like the only place to eat in town
yeah,
until the casino opened, and they talked to us, and they were there to make sure that the games were set up a certain way to manipulate you and to mess with your head. If you ever notice when the bells go off, everybody in a casino will go that direction, and so that's part of it. It's
yeah.
and so yeah, so it's there's some, even if I
Chemicals
don't
are
like it, it's
released in your brain. It's like dopamine. Like when you hear a text, there's
mhm.
a certain level of dopamine that's released
Yeah,
in
you
your
get like a
brain.
thrill up your leg. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's how
There's something there.
social media is basically trying to hypnotize us all the time with subliminal messaging to
Hmm.
get us to sell things, to get us hooked on things.
Hmm.
So in a sense, social media is basically like trying to hypnotize us.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I
Um,
have no doubt about that.
all right,
You can see
so
it. Yeah.
are y'all ready
I'm
for me to try this
I'm
hypnosis
ready.
session on you?
All right.
All right, it's gonna be a little less than 10 minutes, so it's under 10 minutes. So after we're done, if you're watching from home, I'd love to hear how you're feeling, and Brian's gonna be my test subject. So
And if I die doing this, do not wait 7 fucking months to come back and deal. I can't believe that 7 months. That's crazy. Like, why did you pick? Why not like yesterday? You know?
I
Yeah,
know, the poor
that was.
guy. All right, here we go. So sit back, relax,
All right.
take a moment to settle in to a comfortable position. Close your eyes and begin focusing on your breath. Take a deep breath in and a longer breath out. A deeper breath in, a slower breath out. Allow each breath to relax you more deeply. Breathe in relaxation and exhale any tension. With each breath, feel your body becoming more and more relaxed. Feel your muscles soften, your mind become still. Now, as I count down from 5 to 1, you will go deeper into this peaceful state. 5, feeling your body relax, sinking deeper into your chair. 4, your mind becoming calm and quiet. 3, relaxing even further, letting go of any worries. 2, almost there, feeling completely at peace. 1, deeply relaxed and open to positive change. Now, imagine a staircase in front of you, leading to a place of complete peace and positivity. Begin to descend the stairs, feeling more relaxed with each step. 10, 9, 8, deeper with each number. 7, 6, 5, feeling a warm sense of calm. 4, 3, 2, almost there. 1, fully relaxed, entering a beautiful, safe space where powerful transformation happens. In this peaceful state, you are now open to receiving positive energy for health, wealth, and happiness. For health, see a brilliant healing light surrounding your body. Feel this light nourishing every cell, bringing vitality and strength. Imagine yourself feeling energized, vibrant, and full of life. Every day, you make choices that support your health, and your body responds by becoming stronger and healthier. For wealth, imagine a golden light surrounding you, symbolizing abundance and prosperity. See opportunities flowing easily into your life. Visualize financial freedom and the resources you need arriving effortlessly. You are worthy of success, and wealth flows to you from expected and unexpected sources. You make smart, confident decisions that align with your goals, and abundance grows in all areas of your life. For happiness, feel a soft, warm light filling your heart. You deserve to be happy, and this happiness radiates from within you, attracting more joy into your life. See yourself smiling, laughing, and enjoying meaningful connections with others. You focus on the positive in every situation, and happiness grows more and more each day. You are healthy, you are wealthy, you are happy. And these positive energies continue to grow in your life. Now, as you continue to relax in this state of health, wealth, and happiness, know that these feelings are deeply rooted in your subconscious mind. They will continue to guide you in your waking life. In a moment, I will count from 1 to 5, and with each number, you will begin to return to full awareness, feeling refreshed and energized, bringing these positive changes with you. 1, slowly beginning to come back. 2, feeling more awake, bringing this peaceful energy with you. 3, feeling calm and centered. 4, becoming more aware of your surroundings. 5, eyes open, fully awake, feeling wonderful in every way. You are ready to embrace your health, wealth, and happiness. All right. How do you feel?
I feel good. Did anybody else do it? I don't think
Mopar, did you listen to the hypnosis? Do you feel any different? Do you feel any subtle shifts in your mood, your mind, your energy? Was it difficult to relax and listen to my voice? Was
No,
it
I got
easy?
into it. I got into it there about midway. So the counting one at the beginning, but the stairs threw me off. That's the only one. The stairs still, because I was thinking they were going up, and then when you said down, I had to rethink it. But I mean, that's just my brain. But I was able to keep on subject to what you were doing. I was able
Were
to
you
keep
able
focused on it.
to clearly visualize the light and the stairs? Were you able to see those things in your mind's eye?
The light around me, no. I had a little
No?
trouble with
Okay.
that one. A little trouble with that one. That was a little hard to imagine. But do you think that's how hypnotherapy goes? I thought they got you in a trance that you're like you didn't like when they bring you out of it, you don't remember that you were in it, you know?
It's a stereotype. Yeah. I
But I mean,
mean,
that's what hypnotism is, though, right? I mean, the original one, right?
hypnotherapy is more like guided meditation. Um, Oftentimes, if you're hypnotized, the stereotype is, oh, you wake up and you don't remember anything, but that's
Mhm.
just one type of hypnosis. This was more like hypnotherapy.
Have you
So,
have you seen the movie?
the walking down the stairs is a very common hypnosis practice, especially if you're trying to rewire the brain in some way. The visualization of walking down a staircase is a really common practice in
Hmm.
hypnotherapy.
Have you seen the movie by Mike Judge, Office Space?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
he gets the hypnotherapist at the beginning, and he tells him to essentially not give a fuck, and
yeah,
his life gets considerably better.
yeah.
Um, so I mean, but there's actually a book called The Art of Not Giving a Fuck. So I mean, there's something to that. If you could go to a therapist and they help you kind of release your stress,
Yeah,
yeah, the way you feel about something, maybe that bogging you down, because you can't. A lot of the things that people get worried about or stressed about in their life, you can't do anything about those.
yeah,
Those are just realities of life. So being
right.
able to handle it better, if that helps you handle your stress better, more power to you.
Yeah, being
Mm.
able to accept the things you can't control and
Mhm.
just focusing on what you can control without getting too attached to a specific outcome. I think
But
that's
the hypnotherapy, I saw a lot of the stuff when I was trying to research this. There was a lot of people that talked about it helping them quit smoking. And even though I might say they did it on their own, who cares? If that helped you quit doing something that you didn't, who cares?
yeah.
That's fine. And then you can have just as much as afforded to you for that. That's nothing wrong with
Mm.
that. You don't have to, yeah, great. It worked in that way,
Yeah.
to some extent. So yeah, that more power to you.
Mopar says, felt really nice, calming, and found my safe space. Oh,
Oh,
well,
the
I'm happy
safe
to
space.
hear that, Mopar. I'm glad. Anybody else listening, let me know how it felt for you. I'd be curious to know.
Oh, so yeah, but you got the voice for it though. You could remember when I was younger, there were these cassettes that people would listen to when they were going to sleep, and it would sounded just like what you're saying, and it
Yeah.
was these ways to kind of put you into a trance for you to go to sleep on.
Yeah.
So I don't know,
Well,
maybe there's some money to be made.
yeah, I have some guided meditations on my YouTube channel, Yoga Flow with Kim. I actually have a whole meditation that's just a sleep meditation. There's a fine line between meditation and hypnosis, or this type of hypnosis. So Sean says that was lovely. Okay, well, I'm glad you
There we
enjoyed
go.
it. Yeah.
Okay, so would you liken it the same thing as this stuff we're talking about? Would you liken that to the same thing as like an athlete? They're going to try to do a heavy lift for a competition, or they're going to try to run that quarter mile in a certain. So they sit there and they psych themselves out. You see them on the sidelines with a headset on, and they're trying to get, same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
it's that they're basically trying to hypnotize their brains to
Get in
be
the
to
zone.
have
As it were.
superpowers, to have super strength.
Mhm.
You know, when you've seen people do martial arts and they're capable of like breaking boards and breaking
Mhm.
bricks, that comes from the mind.
Oh, you want to hear a weird one? A weird
Yeah,
thing that the body can do?
yeah.
Okay, so electricity doesn't have any mass, as it were. It may correct me if you like. And if I'm wrong, please correct me. But if you see those videos where somebody puts something in a light socket and they get electrocuted and it shoots them across the room,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm talking about? They don't get shot across the room by the electricity because the electricity doesn't have mass. It's you physically pushing yourself across the room. So when you see them, like they hit a charge and you see them pow and they get launched, they're launching themselves. You're physically doing that yourself. The
Yeah,
electricity just excited you to do it, but you did it physically yourself. The idea that you can shoot yourself across the room like that, or a mother can pick pick a car up off their child,
yeah.
those types of things.
Adrenaline. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, but it can be adrenaline, but I can give you an adrenaline shot. Like you can buy those for people that
yeah,
have, and you can shoot yourself with it. You ain't going to be able to do that necessarily.
yeah,
But you can call yourself to do it naturally. That's really fucked up, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Like the adrenaline
Absolutely.
shot isn't like you could, if that was the case, then you'd already see somebody that's lifting way more weight than anybody could ever lift. They'd take an adrenaline shot and they do it, but you don't see that because I don't think that's how that works. But you
Mm-hmm.
can get your body to give you adrenaline that you already have in your body and excite you, and
Mm-hmm.
you can, which is remarkable. And that's the same thing with those people coming off of like an electrical shock.
Mm-hmm.
They're launching themselves. Your body's capable of doing amazing things. Maybe that's a doorway to that. I don't know. I don't know.
You have to believe you can do those things, because if you don't believe that you can um pick up this bottle, right?
Mhm.
That's how magicians do a lot of tricks, or that's how a lot of like modern day hypnosis works. Is people who are trying to hypnotize someone, they've convinced their subject that at this point they can't open their eyes. And if you believe that you can't open your eyes, it'll be harder for you to open your eyes, right?
Mhm.
It's all about what you believe. So our beliefs can really affect us physically and can pretty much
You've heard
change our
the
reality.
you've heard the stories where people get diagnosed with terminal cancer, and the doctors pretty much tell them to go home and die, and they go home and they die, and they didn't have cancer.
Huh?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
just shut down. They just
Yeah.
shut down on their own.
And
But
so
yeah, that's
that's
yeah.
likewise, I mean, if someone is telling you you're sick and you believe that you're beyond repair, you probably will be. But if you
Yeah.
believe that you can heal, if you believe that you can get better, you're much more likely to get better. Because
There's something to that. Okay, so a lot of what we're talking about is placebo, and I don't have any problem with messing with that and studying it. I guess the only thing that I would take issue with is when somebody starts to sell it to you. You can't sell placebo to somebody. You know what I mean?
right.
Like you see the
Yeah.
faith healers slapping people on the heads, and
Yeah.
I had friends years ago that were bouncers, and they would get the gigs for like the preachers at those televangelistic shows, and they would be the guy that caught them when they fell over, when the preacher put their hand on their head. And what their job was when the preacher went up and he put their hand on their head, these are big fellas that standing next to you, they would shin kick you as hard as they could. But you're so adrenalined up when you get on stage that you don't notice the guy just kicked you really hard, and that makes you fall down really fast.
Right.
So they would purposely kind of throw you down, but you're so wound up that you just don't notice. But you do still, that people walk away feeling like they're better. Probably not, but it's interesting though.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do know that hypnotherapy has helped a lot of people with PTSD.
One of the guys mentioned it here. Your buddy.
PTSD, that's a good point, Mopar. Hypnotherapy has been known to be helpful with PTSD, also anxiety, depression, quitting bad habits, sleeping. There's a lot of people who just practice sleep hypnosis, and it's basically like a sleep meditation. It helps you guide you into sleep because they're just relaxation techniques. And there is something to be said about when you're visualizing in your mind's eye, when your eyes are closed and you're visualizing certain things, whether that's light, whether that's the beach, it can change the chemistry of your brain and put your brain out of a beta frequency. So our beta waves, we have a lot of beta waves when we're really stressed, but when we're more relaxed, we have more alpha waves. So when you're visualizing the light, like I did in that hypnosis, that puts your brain in a relaxed state, which is similar to a state you're in when you're susceptible to creative thought. And delta waves are other waves when you're basically when you're dreaming. So I feel like there's a lot of reasons to explore hypnosis in the modern day sense.
Not to discount it, but I put this as well as most things, reflexology, massage, chiropractors. I put all of them in the same wheelhouse. And in this respect, a lot of people in the Western world, not necessarily in more deprived countries, because you don't find those things there necessarily. But the reason why they thrive so well in especially the Western world is, I think, a lot of people are lonely. And a lot of these things hinge around the idea that somebody else is paying them some mind and giving them attention. And that ends up being a very healing thing. Reflexology is an example. You're not really doing any of that stuff they say, but it's just it's physical touch. It's somebody touching your feet. Religions talk about that being a profound thing, but I liken a lot of the healing factor to the things we're talking about. I liken a lot of that to a lot of those people, therapy. When people go to therapy, a lot of times it's not necessarily the things the doctor's telling them. It's not necessarily any of that. A lot of it's just, man, somebody's just listening to me for a change and paying me some mind. And that means a lot to a lot of people. I mean, I hate to say it, but I liken a lot of that to that. Doesn't discount it, because you need that. And it sucks that you got to pay somebody for it, but either way you're getting it. Yeah, but you're getting it either way. But you get what I'm saying, though?
Yes, I do get what you're saying. Going back to the science behind all of that, social interaction helps you release oxytocin. Physical touch helps you release oxytocin. But I'm one that actually I do believe in like the healing benefits of reflexology and like certain pressure points on the body. Just because I'm trained, I'm a masseuse, so I'm trained in that. So I believe in the benefits of all that. But I see what you're saying. Like, I think a lot of that healing does come from just the emotional support. From feeling like somebody gets me, someone's listening to me. And there's chemicals that are released in your brain when you feel connected to someone. So anyway, I have to take off here in just a few minutes. But for those of you listening,
I wanted to make one example that it sounds counterintuitive, but I have to make it. Smoking. When people quit smoking, they get suicidal a lot of times. And I think that's because when people smoke cigarettes, what they're doing is about every hour, they take 5 minutes for themselves. And they go out and they sit and they take long breaths and they kind of contemplate. And when they quit smoking, they just stay in the mix all day and it wears them out. And I
Yeah,
hate to
it's
say
not
it,
the
but that's
nicotine it's the
that
5-minute
reflection,
break.
that
Yes.
reflection. Yeah.
And the deep breaths. So we talked about this before.
Right through that
But
filter. Yeah.
seriously, like deepening and lengthening your breath, it can really reset your nervous system and
Yeah.
make you feel better. So I think there's some truth to what you're saying for
All
sure.
right.
All
So
right.
yeah,
I
we'll go
wish
from
I
there.
could chat more. I have to get going. I have to
Gotta read these
hold this
books.
rehearsal. I have to read some more books here.
There's a lot
No,
of
I'm
shit to
directing a
read.
play. I have rehearsal. But this
Okay,
was a
man.
fun
Okay.
discussion. For those of you who are watching at home, let us know what you thought about our story. If you loved it, if you hated it, if it's somewhere in the middle. For me, it's kind of in the middle. And I know, Brian, you loved it, right?
I love the verbosity of it. I think it's hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah, and let us know what you thought of my little hypnosis. If you loved it, if you hated it, if you're somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
Brian,
I
did
liked
you
it.
hate it?
Honestly, I thought it was going to be corny as all hell, but I actually liked it. So I think
Okay.
that I would think that would be something that I would benefit from going to, especially during stressful moments. You need
Yeah.
that time to kind of that reflection. That's very important. I think that's very important. So yeah,
Oh,
I
cool.
think good.
Well, thanks for
Self-help, nothing
joining
wrong
us,
with it.
Mopar and Sean and Daniel. We'll be doing another one very soon. And we'll be reading another poem by Edgar Allan Poe and talking about perhaps an urban legend or maybe a grim fairy tale or something else. Pay attention to our community page, and I will
Mhm.
post the time and topic of the next one on our community
If there's
page.
any Poe that you want to hear, please throw it in there. We'll definitely look into it and see if it's something we can put up. That'd be fun. No problem with suggestions.
Yes,
Love
for
it.
our next podcast, if there's any Poe poems you really want us to read and analyze, just comment below. Or if there's any other just spooky stories, something funny, spooky, or something scary, spooky, it doesn't matter. Comment below, let us know. We'd be happy to read it and analyze it and
Instead
chat.
of these books.
Yeah,
Yes.
instead
Yes.
of these books. All right, well, cool. In the meantime, everyone take care and hope